might be the same, and thank you for letting me know that my sound is not working again. As we found out last week, we had some sound issues, but I think I have it fixed this week. It's a cable issue that was going on, so I just have to remember that the cable has to stay in a particular position. So yes, now it's fixed. I just have to make sure the cable stays in this one spot. Otherwise it won't work. So yes. Now that we know. So as I was saying, we are heading into the salt marshes. And we're going to take some time to explore each of the characters that we went through last year, as a way of just sort of thanking them for being on that journey with us as we go into the new year and explore some new things as we move forward. So this week is the salt marshes, and now we are heading in there to see what this young druid might have learned after discovering that note in the bottle that drew her away from her young fishing village. Last week, hopefully while my sound was working, we talked about the suggestion jar. So I did set up our suggestion jar. Now I know we're not quite using our suggestion box just yet, but I did put some notes in there that we might draw later. Some thoughts we might talk about for our druid friends, and if you all have some more thoughts you would like to throw out to me later on, we can put them in the jar and chat as we are painting later, so hopefully that will be some fun. And without further ado, let's get started and head off into the salt marshes. So the tale to be told tonight begins thus. We are in a small fishing village in the salt marshes. And as always, there are waves and gulls and crashing stones and various small little creatures scuttling along the sands. And there is a young druidess. Her name is Nerys. I'll put that in the chat for you all so you can see how it's spelled. There might be something a bit interesting about how her name is spelled later for those of you who are curious to ask me about that. All right, so young Nerys is about 14 years old at the time our story starts. And she has just found a note in a bottle. And the note reads thus: Dear Fae of the Sea, we, the Council of Saltmarsh, request your company on the full moon of this month. We have use of your skills and can offer coin of the highest value. We hope you enjoy these gifts. And she finds with the bottle a rare amulet, and she finds that it's an amulet of protection. Now, she believes that these gifts are from her own goddess and that this is a call to arms. And so she leaves her family in the village and goes off to find the Council of Saltmarsh. And her whole journey is writing letters back home to her family. And although she's very worried about what might happen without her there, she does continue on with her adventures, despite her youth and her inexperience, After all, she doesn't know what these coins are, but she is curious what her goddess might have her do. And as she writes home, she says, "I know you're worried for me when that glass bottle arrived from the sea. I was too young for Lady Ran to call me from our seaside home. However, if the goddess calls me, I must go, even far from the village I love. My journey to the heart of Saltmarsh was fair, protected by the magic of the goddess left on the shore. Strange persons awaited me at the Council of Saltmarsh, including a tall, furried humanoid that reminds me of those rabbits that play in the woods of our home. I do wonder if this strange creature might be cursed." And with this, we do meet our first glimpse of the rest of the party. And the rest of our party for Saltmarsh included Fergus, a human fighter, Nefel, an Aragenasi sorceress, Peter, the Harangon cleric, whom Nerys many times was tempted to ask if he might be cursed. After all, how many times do you meet a humanoid rabbit-like creature? Fellerin, a Triton paladin, and Myrtle, a hag-dwarfed rogue. Now, most of these creatures aren't people that Nerys would have met all that often. And perhaps at some point you'll figure out what I mean. But I'm going to keep that part a secret for now. The council was hoping for assistance with negotiating with a local group of creatures. Now you and I would know them as lizard folk, but Nerys didn't know what those were. And when she met them for the very first time, she was quite surprised to see their long tails and their scaly skin. And she drew some very interesting pictures to send home to her family. She also was very interested to see how everyone created their own unique makeshift camps along the road. Especially how many of them weren't all that interested in sleeping in, shall we say, normal shelters. But that's a story for another time. Eventually, we did make it back to the seashore, and that's where Nerys was most comfortable, in the water. And we boarded a ship known as the Winter Soul. And Nerys loved being on this boat. It was her favorite part of the entire journey. And although the captain was a bit gruff, and, well, maybe the crew wasn't entirely to her liking either, the ship was like a second home to her, and she truly, truly loved it there, and wrote home about it quite often. Well, eventually they did have to leave the salt marshes and try to head north to what we would know as a city, but what Nerys kept calling a collection of different housings. She'd never been to a town or city before, having grown up in the small sheltered village her entire life. But she was quite fascinated about the walls. After all, you don't see walls around a city just every day. And while this wasn't the free city of Greyhawk, it was quite interesting to her. And after being there for some time, they eventually decided to head back out to sea. But they encountered pirates. I did mention those pirates earlier, did I not? And this is where we're going to continue our story. This morning, we boarded the Winter Soul to return to Saltmarsh. The captain refused to allow a certain creature they captured back on board, but I am sad we could not return him to his family. The most incredible magic did occur on our journey, though. When a group of pirates attacked our ship, They were so numerous that even the mighty Fergus struggled to hold them back, and there was quite a storm during our journey. I called upon the sea, and a mighty storm surrounded us, and lightning struck at the pirates, driving them back into the ocean, where Lady Ran claimed their souls. Old Nerys rode again this night. I hope that you would be proud of me. There was many lightning strikes, and quite a few cries of pain. I had never seen anything like it. I didn't know I could call the lightning in this way. But as we headed into the Saltmarsh, I heard rumors of this most interesting tradition. Did you know that humans throw themselves off of cliffs to honor their dead, just like we young ones do at the first change? I was so amazed. I wonder what other universal traditions you might hear of. To celebrate the first lightning call, I decided to try it as well. The whole party was very scared that I would fall. But when I leapt off the cliff, I decided to trick them. It is fun to cause a little chaos. So, as I flew off the cliff, I performed the change. And I slipped into the water as a seal. And I swam and swam and swam and went all the way around the cliff and climbed back out to see if they could find me. They were so worried, they thought I had fallen. But no, we were all perfectly fine. I wonder what they thought of that. It was quite interesting. As they continued through the Saltmarsh, they heard many worrisome things, including that there was lots of fighters and various other different things. But eventually, they were able to do very good things, including try to help build this portal that would help save everyone from the different warriors who were trying to attack the free cities of Greyhawk and disrupt the peaceful area of Saltmarsh. Now, Nerys may not know much about building mirrors and portals and magics, but she is eager to help when people try to explain things to her. And with the help of Nefel, she does eventually figure things out. There are a few very interesting things that Nerys figures out along the way. Have you ever seen, for example, a chicken farm? Now, I don't know about where you all are, but where I'm from, we used to have a lot of ranch land around here. There's still quite a few people here who carry chickens. They're kind of funny when they get really excited. Now, Nerys had never seen a chicken before. The first time she did, she was kind of excited about it. Turns out, chickens aren't as excited about her as she is about them. Maybe it's something about the way she always smells a bit about the sea, and chickens aren't so eager about getting wet. But they did eventually figure out how to get along with each other after a bit of time. She also never quite worked out how to do formal wear, but hey, if someone was trying to take your favorite fur cloak and put you in a fancy dress, you might get a little upset about that too. After all, not everyone looks their best in silks and finery. Sometimes we look our best when we're in the wilds, and that's, I think, the way Nerys likes it the best. Well, one thing she did particularly enjoy was when a small dragon hatched. She does really like those animal creatures. After all, every druid really likes to pet creatures. It's their favorite thing to do, after all. They really want to take care of nature. And although Nerys' patrons are the spirits of the waters and the sea, that doesn't mean she doesn't care about everything else. She may be a circle of the water, but she also cares for everything else, as a true druid should. Eventually, she does go somewhere that she doesn't feel the most comfortable. And unfortunately for her, that is the desert. And even though she preys upon her patron goddesses, they aren't quite able to protect her in the desert. And sadly, that is where her story does end, lost in a sandstorm. And for now, we don't quite know where her story will go next. But wherever it will be, I'm sure it'll be quite amazing. Because she's quite an interesting creature. So maybe her patron goddess rescued her. Maybe she'll show up somewhere you'll least expect it. You never know. She's quite young after all, and sometimes those younglings are the ones that will most surprise you. They find a way to clever themselves out of all kinds of situations, and you really never know where they're going to go next. All right. So while Nerys Delin's story may be paused for now, she may be not quite lost at sea, but lost in the desert. Plenty of other stories that still remain to be told. And there's still plenty of questions we could learn about her and learn from her. So, as we prepare to finish up our painting and our story, I hope you'll think of some questions we can ask her, things we could possibly learn from her. And let's see what other tales to be told and tales still to be told we can think about along the way. All right, let's take a short break to set up some painting, and then I hope we can have a fun chat about Nerys and Ghosts of Saltmarsh. See you all soon. Welcome back. Okay. Once again, help me help all of you and let me know if we have any audio issues. hopefully that is resolved, but I did have to futz around a little bit to get the painting set up. So if I bumped any cables, let me know if things are not where they should be and are not cooperating, because sadly I wouldn't know. On my end, it looks like audio is totally fine, and then it will turn out that it's not working. And the only way I would know is if you all tell me. And that's just kind of how it works, sadly. All right, so we'll do our little recap, as it were. So last week we finished up with the Fae Festival. I'm wondering if anyone from last week was able to guess what historical events I used as inspiration, as it were. While you might be thinking about that, this is the finished watercolor. You might notice there's a little bit of warping. I kind of had to fight this painting. I don't know why. Every now and again, there's just one painting you kind of end up fighting with, as it were. This is mine. This is the one I was fighting with. Shit happens. So this is the one. We had all kinds of shenanigans last week, didn't we? We had audio issues, we had internet issues, we had warping issues. Hey, stuff happens. You know, finish out the year with lessons, I guess. So yes, that's how it was. If no one guesses by the end of the night what historical... Actually, I should write a note to myself, because I'll forget. Tell them the history. Okay. I will tell you all at the end of the night, in case nobody has guessed. Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna get back into the painting here. Okay, and then we will go forward. Earlier, Tori made a note that I seem to like characters with the suffix. Well, in Welsh it's not a suffix, but in English it would be the suffix "lyn" in them. I'm gonna go with maybe on that. Maybe. I guess it's more of a personal opinion thing. I say maybe because of the characters I've made myself. Only one actually had lyn in it. Yes, only one had lyn. And that was Nerys. As far as I know, I don't think I've done anybody else with lyn that I've made. I have played other characters with that suffix in it, and that was Glen Wither. If any of you do Gooey Coop games, you'll know he's a pre-generated character from the Red Star Rising campaign. But I didn't, I picked him, obviously, but I didn't make him, and I didn't pick his name. He's a pre-generated character, not mine, and certainly not my creation in any way, shape, or form. All I did was level him up and play him. So, can't take credit for that. It just happened. Speaking of names, did anyone figure out why I might have named Nerys Nerys Dylan? Did anyone have kind of a inkling on how Welsh or Old Celtic kind of works, and have thoughts there on how that might have come to be? Any thoughts at all? I will tell you in half a mo. I actually don't want this brush. I don't know why I did that. Sometimes your brain just does very random things in the middle of work, and you're just like, no, that wasn't it. That's fine. I didn't actually want any of those things. I feel like I need to do some detailing on this. Yeah, detailing. I've been doing a lot of dry brushing on this, but I had to let it dry off so much that I think I'm gonna end up having to re-wet everything. That makes me nervous. Very, very nervous. No thoughts on Nerys still in? That's fine. Well, while we're still thinking about that, I'll give you guys a couple more minutes. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about this illustration. So this is meant to be part of the salt marshes from her home. Oh, you come back to a masterpiece, do you? I don't know about that. This thing took forever to try. It's still damp. Yeah, it's been raining all week here, and that kind of screws with watercolor. We'll see. I'm gonna risk it. That was too blue. That's fine. What was I saying? Oh, I was saying that this is meant to be the salt marshes of Nerys' home. And so we're throwing in a lot of shallow water, so you're gonna see a very creeping in the background. Okay. And thank you. Good luck at your game tonight. There's gonna be a lot of shallow water and things being reflected, and I see in the camera that it looks a lot more blue, or not blue, green, I mean, than it actually is. I don't really know why it's doing that in the camera tonight. Oh, Ray's gonna be joining. Yay! I don't know why I only read half of that comment and then stopped. That's very, very odd. Having the weirdest brain night. Stopping mid-conversation to... Anyways. So I'm just trying to, like, glue this up a little bit. But I do think that I need to pull Payne's Gray again. I really wanted to really switch gears and do Saltmarsh first so that we could get out of the cold lands and away from Payne's Gray. And then the first color I pulled out for the ocean was Payne's Gray, and I was like, welp, never mind then. We're still here. It's fine. Doesn't matter at all. It's just one of those colors you use in nature, like, constantly ends up being Payne's Gray. I don't really know why. It's just one of those things. Okay, I'm gonna kind of layer the cloud color cover a little bit more. I feel like it didn't come out as dark as I wanted. And because it's already damp and there's not much I can do about that, so I'm probably not going to be able to put in some of those details that I wanted anyways, I might as well just, like, darken it up and go nuts. Because I don't have much more I can do anyways. I'm going to kind of have to... So yes, in a minute I will pull something from the jar and we'll see if we can't get this a little bit of a campaign convo started. Because I know we've all had curiosities about different things going on in our world. And I dropped some clues about who Nerys is and different stuff. And I'm wondering how many clues maybe you all caught. You know it, you're tired when you're saying very strange things. And it's not even that late at night. Okay, that's a little better on that cloud cover, I feel like. A little bit better, because it's supposed to be a stormy sky. Very stormy sky. Stormy, blot, blot, blot. The other thing that sometimes happens is when you have just a lot of blue going on here is that sometimes things just kind of get almost like too blue in your cleaning bowl. You might have noticed that in the pre-video earlier, is that sometimes it just sort of like almost gets like it's so blue, and then you try to like wash out any other color like this yellow, and then it ends up being like green. And the whole thing is just weird after that. So then you kind of have to like go back in later when things are a little bit better, simply because things just got odd, things got odd, and now you kind of have to just go back in, kind of fudge some stuff, see if you can't like clean up a little bit of this, create a little light bleed, see if you can't, because there shouldn't really be any of this weird green stuff, because that's not how, I know not all of us grew up around the ocean, but like, if any of you have been near the beach for any amount of time, even just like a vacation, or you just happen to like see, that's too orange, oh well, see that kind of like there's no green in that sky, let me tell you, or even just like nice sunset over a lake, okay, there's no green going on up there. So when weird things happen, weird things just kind of blend sometimes with watercolor. It just happens sometimes, and so you just kind of have to go back and be like, no, let me just get rid of that. There really shouldn't be any purple in the sky. Have you ever heard that story? That old, it's kind of we call them old wives' tales, but it's really more of an old sailor's tales in this case. Red sky at morning, sailor's delight, or something like that. So there really shouldn't be any red in the sky because it's a storm. So we don't want really a whole lot of red. We want it to be more purple because there is a storm coming, so there shouldn't be red. There's actually a scientific reason for why the sky will be red, and it means no storms. And it's true, there won't be a storm because it's red like that. So we don't really want it to be red, we want it more to be like a darker, angrier, kind of like, because it is stormy. And we don't want it to be all, because it's just not accurate. Don't know what else to say that. It's just not how it works. Okay, there we go. That's a little bit better. Of course, I bled it out too much. Now it's too wet. How about some... Let's try this. It's just too wet. I hate it when that happens. Okay. I told you it wasn't dry. So this is probably a good spot. I'm gonna have to come in later and well, maybe if I just, I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that corner for a second. Sometimes you just overwork a spot and then you're like, well, it's all over now. We'll see. That is one of the things about art, is you kind of have to know when to stop. Because if you don't stop, you sometimes walk yourself into a corner and it happens. Okay. So how about while I teach myself how to stop, speaking of which, we pull something from the jar. Yay! Shake it up, shake it up, shake it up. Okay. One piece of paper. Here we go. Alright. So, let's see. What do we get? What do we get? Oh, most memorable. Can you see this? Most memorable moment from the campaign. Okay. Gosh. This is a good one just to keep for like always. So I'm gonna put it over there. That's a really hard one because there was a lot of really funny stuff that kind of went down in the Saltmarsh campaign. Just kind of like in general, really funny things kept kind of happening because we had at least two player characters that didn't really know, shall we say, like what the real world is all about, and that so it kind of created these really funny moments where we just sort of I don't know, where we really sort of had these weird conversations with people and we didn't really know what was going on. For example, Nerys didn't encounter coins before because that's not something her people would have been using in her world. So we kept having that situation where we would go into shops and she'd just be like, oh yeah, this thing, and then they'd want like payment and she'd be like, right, okay, and then she would like hand them a sand dollar or like something random like that, and that's like not how it works. Even in Saltmarsh, but she doesn't know any better, you know. And so we would get into situations like that, like all the time. And so that kind of creates these fun, memorable moments you kind of look back on years later and laugh. And you have these fun conversations like, oh yeah, like, what's, I don't know, like, what do you mean, what's a sandwich? Like, or, what's well, you know, whatever, like, I don't know, what do you mean ball? Like, it's just kind of funny. And it just kind of makes things really silly and memorable. Especially when you have multiple characters that like do know what's going on and like are left kind of having to explain what's going on. It makes things really silly and entertaining. So yeah, that kind of like, it made it fun. It made it fun and interesting, and I did enjoy that. There was one particular moment where Nerys sort of stood up and used this new amulet she had. I believe it was the Periaps of Healing. I can never say it right. So I'm going to put it in the chat really fast. Periapt of Healing, I believe. Corey will correct me if I'm wrong. She remembers. She was our GM. But when that happens, there was definitely this very interesting reaction between her racial feats and the Periapt, which was not expected by me at all. So I did not have any idea that was gonna happen. And we ended up with which is, I kind of glossed over this during the storytelling. We ended up with believe it or not, a hill giant following us around for a significant amount of time. I mean, like days. And it actually led us to several kids who were lost in these mines and needed some help, which was a really cool moment. Nerys being on land for like this entire adventure didn't really get to use a lot of her feats and skills, and so that was kind of one of those moments where we were just kind of like, oh, this is cool, like we're kind of getting to see what Nerys could do if we were on the ocean a little bit more often. But yeah, so that was kind of interesting to see where things were going. It was just kind of fun. So yeah, sometimes things just kind of go in a way you don't really expect, and when they do, sometimes things kind of create these very interesting moments. I'm kind of sad that we never managed to properly heal that hill giant. Heal the hill giant. Try saying that one 3 times fast. Heal the hill giant. Heal the hill giant. Yes, no. I don't think that one's gonna happen. Yes. Anyways. Okay, so I'm just gonna put in some little like land thingies, trees and squiggles and islands and things. When you're doing stuff like this, if you ever find that you're like, wow, that's too dark, or you know, my horizon line looks weird, you can always like go back and fix it. It's like not the end of the world. I've gone over before that watercolor tends to be pretty forgiving for the most part. I mean, you saw the disaster that kind of happened last week, and yet, with some patience and a little bit of cleverness, it came around. That river wasn't completely useless. It still has a couple weird moments that I kind of look at it and I'm like, that's kind of sideways, I don't know. But not everything is irredeemable, let's put it that way. Not everything. Sometimes you just kind of have to wait it out and be willing to kind of like work with it, you know? And you kind of have to trust your instincts too on like where things are, and when initially you look at it and you're just like, I don't know if that looks right. You kind of have to be like, no, you know what? I do believe that this is where I wanted things. I I trust my art instincts, and it's okay if it looks a little weird. And then it's okay to walk away for a second and come back to it later. Like, I'm gonna leave that there and just make sure that, like, I'm okay with that line. Because normally I would be up a little higher, but I want to make sure you all can see me. So, alright, in the meantime, let's do another jar. Do at least one more. And if you guys think of questions, you can always ask me questions. I love questions. I wouldn't work with children if I didn't love questions. Okay. Why Nerys Delin? Okay, perfect. Because I was just thinking that I never actually explained her name. Okay, so while this is kind of drying for a second, so I don't know if any of you caught a little comment that Nerys made in her journal about old Nerys. Has anyone ever read or heard of the Old Man of the Sea? So, in sailors' folklore, there's the Old Man of the Sea, and depending on who you ask, or with mythology you might be studying at the moment, the Old Man of the Sea is often credited or blamed, depending on the situation, for controlling both the weather and how calm the seas might be in any given moment. So he's sometimes called Old Nerys, and so Nerys was named for him. Both as part of her background and me personally, that's why I chose it. But that's part of her story as a child, is that Nerys was named for Old Nerys, the Old Man of the Sea. In the Welsh language, Lyn actually means lake. Sometimes it's translated more to simply mean waters of the land. It kind of depends on which linguist you're talking to, and well, Welsh is kind of complicated in the sense that there's literally dialects of Welsh, but it's not dialects like we mean dialects of English. I'm going to use English as an example because I'm assuming most of us here are native English speakers. So, for example, the two biggest dialects of English we're probably most familiar with would be British English and American Standard English. That's what they're called. Those are the two dialects. And from there, there's regionalisms. For example, you can probably recognize that from the way I speak, my dialect and accent, we'll just call it accent, it would put me more on the West Coast, so I say like and dude and things like that a lot. And then there might be more regionalisms from the central United States, and then there's regionalisms from, say, like the deep south, we might call it, and then regionalisms from, say, New England. And there's historical reasons for why that would be developing, but then there's also regionalisms in England as well. You can usually recognize someone from Hadrian's Wall region, someone from London, etc., okay? I'm not going to go into all of it because we'll be here all night, literally all night, because there's so many. But Welsh language itself has the same kind of thing. There's dialects based on regions, but it's more complex than that. It can almost be broken down to separate languages of Welsh. It's very interesting the way it's developed. It's I almost can't even explain it properly. I do hope you'll go look it up and see what I mean, because it's quite fascinating. Anyways, so that's why Lyn seems to have almost multiple translations, is because depending on where you are in Wales, it can literally mean different things. It might refer to a lake, or it might refer simply to waters that are not the ocean. So someone might say, oh, yes, the Lynn, and they're pointing to a stream. But someone else might say, yes, the Lynn over there, but they're referring to a lake. And both would be correct, technically, depending on who you're talking to. So, anyways, so that's why Lynn. Now, I added the Lynn designation. Technically, this is not proper Gaelic. So sorry. And it certainly would not be proper Welsh. But for those of you who know a bit about language, you would know that basically what I'm saying in so many words is that Nerys de Lynn is someone who is from both the waters of the land and the waters of the sea. So from the lakes to the sea. That is who Nerys is. Yes, I am a nerd. You're welcome. So yes, that's how she got her name. Now, have any of you figured out why I might do something so strange that basically I found a very complicated way of calling Nerys water? That's what it comes down to, is I called Nerys water. Why would I do something like that? Why on earth would I want to name Nerys something as pedantic as water? I have no idea how to do this. That's very strange. Anyways, so why do I think that So, being distracted here. So why would I consider a creature such as Nerys want to be named water? Did anyone figure out why I would want to do something quite like that? I am very curious to know. Oh, there's definitely not dark enough. That's definitely not dark enough. I am so desperately hoping that someone will say that they know. Ooh, there we go. Nope, that definitely wasn't dry. Oh well. When in doubt, covered up. Ha ha ha. Sometimes you just kind of have to like smudge your mistakes so that no one will know. Anyways. Well, if we don't figure it out by the end, I will tell you once I tell you that other little thing I'm planning to tell you all. Thinking about putting in some reeds. How are you all feeling about reeds tonight? Thoughts? Yes, no, maybe? We shall see, we shall see, we shall see. I do kind of want to fix this mountain, but I do think I need to wait for it to dry just a wee bit. Before I do that, though, I think I need to water down and then add in just a wee bit more. too light, but I feel like I need... Yeah, it was too light. There it is. We're just gonna clean up some of this water. Just a little bit. Not too much though. I don't want it too much. So I want it to dry brush that. We do just want a little bit of... waves. That was probably too much. That's okay. Blend out gauche. That's what's so nice about it. Just make it blend. Okay. It's like it's never there. Okay. Alrighty. Well, I kind of have to wait for this to dry some more. Sadly, the rain kind of got in the middle of things, because that happens sometimes. Sometimes rain just sort of messes with how much you can let things dry. It is what it is. But yeah, so I did promise that if no one guessed what was the historical event that inspired last week's holiday special, I would tell you. But last chances, did anyone guess what it was? Anyone? Bueller? Okay, so last week we went on a very special adventure to the Fae Festival that happened to occur on a very frozen river that included lots and lots and lots of tents and booths, and it's almost like a bazaar. So, has anyone ever heard of the frost fairs that used to occur on London's Thames River? And that is what inspires last week's holiday festival. Now, unfortunately, because of various different things, including warming of the region, which, given the time period, probably isn't connected to global warming, but it's kind of hard to say. Because the last one was, I want to say it was 1816, which kind of predates the time when we think global warming was trending, but hard to say. Probably not related, but we do think it was related to the building of London's bridge, which, while it wasn't completed till quite some time later, we did need to dredge the Thames, which resulted in it becoming much deeper and more quickly running than it had been in quite a few decades, which is great for pollution, which means less of it, but sadly meant the Thames was not going to freeze over like it had in times past, even when winters were cold enough for it to do so, which means for us, no frost fairs, sadly, ever again. That would be the last one. So while we don't get to enjoy a frost fair, at least not on a frozen Thames River, we certainly can be inspired by them and create lovely little stories that we share with all of you guys. So yes, that is it. And for a last wrap up, I'm wondering, did anyone guess what sort of racial creature Nerys was? And did you get any of those hints that I told in the story? Things like being around water, using water spells, creature of the coast, having a fur cloak, singing music. Okay, so Nerys is a Selkie, and she was a homebrewed creature of my own design. This was the first time that I ever played her, and we'll see if she gets played again in the future, but for now, this is her one and only tale, so we shall see how that goes for future tellings. So thank you all for joining me. I hope you enjoyed our lovely little Saltmarsh drawing here together. I will finish it off later once it's dried. Hopefully the rain will hold off enough that our weird weather situation doesn't mess anymore with watercolors. And then I will post you all so that you see how it finished off later this weekend. And fingers crossed, no more audio weirdness for next week. Let me know in the suggestion jar if any of you would like to see pictures or sketches of Nerys herself, or if you'd like to see lovely images of her journal that I have with me and all those lovely pictures that she sent home to her family back on the salt marshes. Until next week, don't forget to feed your hungry mimics with lots of adventures and stories, and I hope you all have a most lovely week and weekend. Goodbye, everyone.